Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another Red Talk here on the Camera and Sickle. In the early morning on January 14th, the United Teachers Los Angeles, the nation's second largest teachers union, went on strike after months and months of stalled negotiations. The union had several demands, ranging from pay raises to class sizes and on campus resources. 1 week of missed classes, marches, and rallies later, the district agreed to several union demands to end the strike. But some teachers feel that not much has changed since the strike, and contract uncertainties leave many feeling worried. History teacher and union chapter chair Soni Lloyd founded the Caucus of Rank and File Educators, CORE LA, to address the concerns shared by many teachers. With elections just a few months away, Soni launched his campaign for union leadership under the CORE banner. Today I'm sitting down with Soni Lloyd in his classroom at Venice High to learn more about his organizing efforts. Soni, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
So this year was a big year for teachers in LA. We had one of the biggest teacher strikes in our nation's history earlier this year. Some of the things you were fighting for, there's teacher raises, class sizes, which are really, really high. What were some of the goals of the union in the strike?
Well, I think the goal was really to reverse the trend of privatization of public education. With the charter expansion in LA has just been out of control. We have more charter schools than any city in the country right here in Los Angeles, and it's really undercutting public education. It's undercutting good union jobs. We've lost 10,000 UTLA positions in the last 15 years due to charter expansion. So, the two go hand in hand. We need to halt charter expansion and then rebuild our public schools back to where, they used to be pre-recession, right? There was more services on our campuses. We've had a big reduction in clerical, custodial, almost by 2/3. Now, those weren't directly related, to our demands, but anytime you take an adult off campus, it affects, the overall well-being and the care of the students. If the campus isn't clean, if there's not clerks to do certain jobs, then everyone else gets overworked, right? Pay in LA, where, LAUSD pays the least amount of any school district in LA County. So, inflation's gone up 27% since in the last 15 years, our pay has only gone up about 10% in that time. So we're looking to catch up to inflation, right?
Right.
Not even necessarily a raise, right? A raise actually increases your buying power. We're just trying to get our buying power back to where it was back in 2007. A lot of things that built up and resulted in a major strike, right? Our class sizes being too big, administrators is having too much power, harassing people out of the profession.
Right.
We have something, teacher jail in LAUSD, where you're not really given due process and being able to defend yourself.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of bad stuff about the teacher jail.
Right. So in some of the teacher jail wasn't even on the one of the demands, but it led to the anger of teachers in Los Angeles, right? A lot of things that have been taken away from the profession, and people just wanted to strike. I mean, it was one of those situations.
So as large a role, obviously the pay issue is a significant part of it, but it wasn't just about getting a pay raise, like some people would say.
Oh no, not at all, not at all. I mean, we wanted nurses, psychologists. Class size was a big thing, which we did win. Enforceable caps for the first time, right? So and that's something I have felt. The class sizes are a bit lower this year, right? Not I say a bit lower, right? One student is not a lot, and the way admin is interpreting these caps. If the cap is 45, they're 45 and they're good. Right? They're not trying to go lower than that.
Right.
So, yeah, there was. It wasn't just about pay, but also at the same time, as a labor union, we can't be apologetic about demanding fair wages for our
Right,
services,
absolutely.
right? And that's a fundamental principle of labor unions. That's all we have to sell is our labor, right? And we need to get the best terms we can, right?
Right. So you're mentioning, we did get class size cap and an enforced class size cap, um, but it's a limited effect. Are Would you say overall uh, you're satisfied with the results of the strike? What was actually won?
Not completely. I mean, some people say there's nothing gained. Some people say there was a whole lot gained. I mean, I'm in the middle on that, right?
Hmm.
Anytime you put 50,000 people on the streets and second biggest teacher union on the street, you're gonna get something out of that if you really face down your enemy. And you know the history I learned about that deal, right? We didn't really win much until those last few hours, right?
Hmm.
Until you know, really hardened people on the bargaining team let leadership know, we're not going back to work. We're not telling our members we're going back to work unless we actually get some tangible things like the class size cap was not won until, from what I hear, like 5 in the morning, that day that we settled. And it was because the rank and file on the bargaining teams told leadership, go back in there and you get us something.
Right.
We're not going back to work without you know some real progress. And
Right.
so there was progress made, but it's I don't believe it was equitable progress, right? So I teach in a magnet. My class size went from 34 to 33, right? But right down the hall, a history teacher doesn't teach in the magnet. Their class size went to from 46 to 45, right?
Hmm.
So, and then you have the elective teachers, they're capped at 45. So you still have teachers here at this school, 5 classes a day, over 40 students after the strike. And I would have been happy to stay at 34 and let my other non-magnet friends come down, below 40. Um, you know, Math and English went to 39 as a cap.
Hmm.
Social studies and science went to 45. Right. So there's a lot of big hoopla made. Oh, we got class sizes down to 39, right, at the secondary level, but that was only
Hmm.
math and English. So, I would have rather, I'm a magnet teacher. I'm not a magnet teacher, right? But if I'm a comprehensive teacher, I would have liked to see maybe math, science, English, they all go down to 41 or 42, right? That's equitable. But you're telling somebody who makes the same wage, you have to teach, essentially 35 more kids a day, right? And just because you teach a different subject, it's not a tested subject. Math and English, it's so big on the testing, right? And so,
Right. Standardized tests are a big thing.
right. And so I think, when I asked the union about that, why bring math and English down so drastically and then leave history and science out? And they said, well, the district, that's kind of where they were going with that. Well, where's the counter?
Right.
That's so.
So it's fair to say it seems almost like the district was kind of offering this class size change almost as a concession so that on paper they could say, look, we address class sizes.
Yes, and they did it on their terms. Um,
Right,
and
one person per year doesn't seem like a whole lot.
No, it doesn't. And I mean, it even sounds good for the union too. Hey, we got one kid per class, right? All classes. But you see, some classes were already low, not low enough, but much lower than others, right? And so you have elementary, you could still have 35 kids in a fourth or fifth grade class, right? That needs to come down a lot more,
Right, right.
right? Why does secondary get a reduction of 6 kids? In math and English, and then elementary. I mean, you talk to elementary teachers, a lot of them claim they got nothing.
Right.
We got the counselors, we got nurses at the secondary level, Elementary, they didn't get the psychiatrist, they didn't get the full-time nurses. Class size reduction, they barely feel it. One student. So yeah, the equity wasn't there, and I think you got to, you teach the kids young, right? You deal with the problems early in life. I mean, we can probably deal with larger class sizes at the secondary level if the kids are coming in well prepared. You
Right, to
know,
set the foundation, their educational learning foundation.
right. So yeah, and it goes back to they didn't let us read the contract. The contract, we still cannot read the contract because it has not been published.
So you did this huge campaign the teachers had been fighting for months and months and months, culminating in this huge strike, but you still don't know what's in your contract.
I mean, we've been told what's in it. Our pay was increased, right? The class size caps. I mean, they're adhering to that. So I mean, there's been some tangible changes, but we don't know exactly what's in there, and this is unprecedented. The contracts are usually out within weeks of a settlement. I've never heard of months. Wayne Johnson, who I've been working with on my campaign, he settled in '89. They said 2 weeks they had the whole thing out there because it's written while negotiations are going on. Right? They agree on
Right.
an article. The lawyers go into another room. They hammer out the language and while they're working on the next article. So by the time negotiations are done, the whole thing's written and it just needs to be collated and given out to the people. But this is unprecedented as a chair. Yes, I don't know exactly. When I go down to negotiate with the principal, I'm just going off of just what I think really is in the
Yeah,
contract.
what you've been told,
And it's been a problem. Even class size, like there's a waiver clause that was put in there, right? I got emailed a link. I'm getting emailed little bits and pieces of the contract as I come up with problems, which is not. That undercuts my power, right?
Right.
I can't walk in there with my contract and say, this is what's going on. I'm like, I'll get back to you, next week when I hear about it. But there's a waiver, a class size waiver where. So the admin came down on us. They realized they were having a lot of trouble getting our classes under cap. A lot of trouble at this school doing that. And we were like, well, we're going to grieve you or whatever. But they came out, there's a waiver form that we can fill out that teachers and parents even get to vote. It's like, how can parents vote on our contract? But we declined the waiver, right? We stood firm, like, no, get these classes in order or we're going to grieve you, right? But just the fact that there's a waiver put in there, if we were able to read that before we voted, we'd be like, what's this? You have a cap, but admin's going to be able to come at us with a waiver every year. And it's all this language of, they're telling us, do what's best. You got to do what's best for the kids, And I'm like, yeah, smaller class sizes are good for the kids. What their point is, we don't want to be switching these kids around, and this kid really needs this class, and he's not going to get it if the class sizes are too high. But that's all stuff that can be proper planning. It could be worked out, and honestly, our school didn't plan it out.
Right. Like that's one thing I've been hearing and seeing other teachers and other people involved in saying is that although we won, you won the class size reduction, and the district can no longer just increase class sizes for no reason. It almost seems like the new alternative for increasing class sizes is easier for them now.
Yeah, I mean, if they get with a pliable chair and faculty, that doesn't. We meet here every week. We meet here in this room, and we all came. We talked about it and said no waiver, right? So yeah, it almost like it's a way to let them off the hook. Oh, if we can get this school to sign a waiver, right, we can just put however many we
if
want.
You don't have that hardcore level of organization, everyone coming together.
Yeah, then they can skirt through, and that's a scary thing. You got a waiver, and now what? You don't have averages anymore. You don't have caps. It's just a free for all. So that was a tricky tool. But what else like that is in the contract? I'm just waiting to see. And I just feel like they've gone so long. and they know 33,000 teachers. We all are very, we're intellectuals. We're going to read it. We're going to tear this thing apart, within days of it coming out.
Of course.
And I just can't wait for Facebook. What's going to happen when this thing come out? People are going to be pointing stuff out left and right. I mean, I hope it's not that bad, but it doesn't feel good to be 10 months out and still not have something to.
Right. So the contract's still not finalized. Do you know who or who's involved with actually physically putting together the contract right now, or is that just kind of in the air?
Well, from what we've been told, and I've asked the union about this number, and I'm in the union, right? I don't want a third party union. I've asked the leadership, right? There's one person from the union and one person from the district, and they are going through language, right? And I've even been told we've caught the district trying to, change the language and put, funny stuff in there. I'm like, whoa, 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 this is a contract. This is not, something you can just change after it's been ratified by the membership. I mean,
right.
And I'm thinking, why aren't we immediately filing a lawsuit or a PERB, Public Employee Relations Board complaint over, a labor violation? As soon as, language is being manipulated, and they say something like, they said, well, it's a 400-page contract and we're going through word by word, the whole thing.
Right.
And I'm like, wait a minute. That's not... We've been mailed. We have like what's been changed, right? Supposedly, we now know we don't have that all, right? Because of the waiver and stuff, we haven't seen that. But they didn't change everything. The strike did. We didn't have demands for all 400 pages of the contract.
Right.
There were a few key things, right? Class size. There were committees set up on testing. There was stuff on special ed. So this whole thing, they're going over through every word of the contract. That's not how it works. But that's what they say. So at some point, membership is going to start to really get upset,
Right, I would imagine so.
Yeah, this can't go on too much longer. And, I'm of the thought that it's probably going to go on until after the election.
So is leadership just not pushing back hard enough, do you think? Or do you think they're just trying to get this done because it's been being worked on for so long? So let's just try to get it done without rocking the boat too much, or?
I think it's a combination of things. I think they are too busy in the political world right now, making alliances, running people for school board, talking with the mayor and running around at the state assembly. And that's fine. The stuff, there's a time and place for that. But then you're the leaders of an organization. You have to take care of the nuts and bolts, right? The day to day. And it's, I feel like Alex and Cecily, they kind of have like rock star status, right, within our union. And it's almost like the day-to-day stuff, the grievances, and it's almost like that's they're too busy to take care of the day-to-day, the nuts and bolts of a labor union, and that's kind of speculation on my part. But I mean, if you haven't written a contract in 9 months, there's something that's not being, the day-to-day stuff isn't being taken care of. But I think more largely, I think they felt like they had a friend in Austin Bootner and the mayor, and I think they got manipulated, and that now they're in a very compromised situation, right? They even said stuff's being added into the contract after the fact, and I don't think they really want to reveal their position that they're in a strike. We have the upper hand. Now the tables have been turned back, and they're being played, basically.
That's like the district wanted to wait for enough time to let the strike be over, let the momentum kind of die out so that they could go back to just doing what they want to do.
Basically, yeah.
So throughout the strike, throughout the negotiations leading up to the strike, the main pushback from the district was we don't have the money for this. This is going to bankrupt us. You're asking for too much. Think about the kids, of course. But then, looking into it, it also seems like that's not necessarily the case. They do have quite a lot of money in reserve funds. What do you think's going on there? Is they just trying to hold the money back? What do you think they're trying to do with the money?
Yeah, after our settlement, they paid us a balloon payment. Not a balloon payment. We got a 3% retroactive for like 16 months. That was a couple $1,000s, whatever. And then we got 3% moving forward. So 6% overall. And after they paid us anyway, that back pay and everything, they still, I follow their financials. They still have $2 billion in reserve, right? So, the money doesn't stop coming in every year from the state, right? They get paid per student. And, what do I think they're doing with it? I think they're intentionally, undermining public education, right? The narrative of the privatizers has to be public education is a failure, right? And we're failing the kids. We have these management companies, these corporations, these charter schools will come in and fix the situation. And if they really fully funded the schools, their narrative would be harder to uphold.
So it's almost like they have to create the scarcity of money. They have to create like a crisis of funding almost.
Oh yeah. Yeah, and it's, even Michelle King, and bless her soul, she's gone, but even her financial report said the district had a structural deficit, right? And it's all based on future projections.
Right. That's the thing I kept seeing earmarked for future use.
Right. And, but we can go back and look at that history and see that, they never used the money or it continued to pile up. That was our main talking point, right? This $2 billion reserve or surplus, as I call it. That money is still there, and it's a propaganda, victory for them to say it's not there. And our leadership in the union now is actually they're mirroring district language, right? When I say I was shouting about the reserve all during the strike. The reserve is still there. Why aren't we talking about it?
Right.
Well, now that money's it's all earmarked. It's all going to be spent. And I say, wow, you guys just sound just like Austin Bootner now, right? And why are they taking on the language of management? Part of it's political. They want to, like EE, right? The property tax increase. They wanted
the ballot measure.
Yeah. And that they wanted that to pass. They had to promote this narrative that our schools don't have money, and it's true. Our school, we do need to fund our schools more, but we also need to use the money we have efficiently, right? And I think instead of really explaining exactly the complexity of that to the public, UTLA just wanted to say, yes, the school district is broke. We need to raise taxes. Right.
Yeah, I like the idea of being open with the public because throughout, the past months, they've always been saying, like, yeah, we have all this money, but it's earmarked for future use. We need it for other things. But then they don't explain what that means. Like, I find it interesting. They have a huge problem with trying to lower class size because that'll be too expensive. But they have no problem at all increasing the budget for the police force, which has been going up almost every year. It's at $67 million right now.
Yeah.
It's a very selective use of the funds I definitely agree, like you're saying, push this narrative that public education has not at all enough money and is broke. So that then, I guess, leads to, you're mentioning that now it seems like union leadership is almost starting to reflect some of that language about, not being able to access certain money and funds. So this past year, a couple months ago, you co-founded the Caucus of Rank and File Teachers, Educators, right?
Yes.
Correlate, and now you are you've announced your candidacy for the presidency for UTLA.
Right.
What is sort of your main goal out of this campaign?
I mean, my main goal is to, you know, use the use the union to, save public education in Los Angeles, right? Public education is one of the best things this country has going for it, and it's under attack. Our union is a powerful union. It's the second largest union in the country, and it can be used as a lever to turn the tide against privatization. Um, and in order for that to happen, we have to, use the resources of our union in the right way. And we really do not build the type of power we could build in this city around public education. So I have a lot of ideas, and CORE has a lot of. We've developed a lot of ideas to really, organize the masses in Los Angeles around public education and social justice in general.
Try to get back that momentum that was surrounding the strike.
Right. Yeah. Take that strike momentum and turn it into, full-time monthly, mass meetings, mass actions, demonstrations. We went down to the charter school CCA downtown for one day. It was good. We surrounded the building, had a big march, but that's one day, right? And now we've kind of made peace with the charters in a sense, like AB 1505.
Right.
It's all this watered down language that we're kind of regulate the charters a little bit more, and now everyone's good. They're going to sit back, and the charter system is going to continue to grow.
Right, that was another one of the demands, right? Like a moratorium on the establishment of charter schools, but instead we got the district agreeing to pass a non-binding resolution asking the state of California to please consider not establishing any more charters. And that costs nothing, stopping all charters. So that I don't. What's the district's argument against doing that?
Yeah, it's actually. I mean, we have a charter school drain, right? The $600 billion or 600 million a year LAUSD money is goes to charters.
Yeah, so
right?
They would make money by stopping charters.
Yeah, essentially, there would be more money for public schools if the charters weren't growing as they are. And CORE calls for the abolition of charter schools in California, right? We're a lot of people say, where does UTLA stand on charters? We can't really tell. They're like, kind of in the middle, and sometimes they're working, organizing charter school teachers at their school sites, which is good. But at the same time, okay, yeah, Green Dot, they got a charter, they got a union at their charter, and now everyone's kind of like, fine, they got a union, that's good, but Green Dot still exists, right? The system that's undermining public education still exists. And so, it has to be a demand to...
And each school site then needs to be unionized. It's not just an across-the-board thing, right?
How does that work? Yeah, I think it maybe is... I think there might be a critical mass at some point that takes place where maybe all of Green Dot is charter now. I know in the beginning, yeah, I even worked on those campaigns. I would go to charter school teachers' houses and we would talk to them about helping them organize a union. It was site by site at first, but there might be some
I think that ambiguity also just shows the harm in the charter school system. We don't really know how it all fundamentally works. We don't really know how to start organizing within it.
Yeah. And charter, I mean, we have a friend here, he just came over from Green Dot, and he said his job was fine at the charter, right? But he said he just didn't feel right being part of this system that was undermining public education. And a lot of people are, as the more they understand what's going on with the charters, the parents and the students and the teachers, the more they start to, turn against it and toward public education as the solution, right? It's equal education for everyone. And that's the promise of America. One of the few promises, right, that we live up to is providing a free public education to everybody. Yeah, CORE is about really educating the public about what's going on, using the union resources to do that, and building a mass movement around justice in public education.
So yeah, trying to sort of bringing more people into the discussion, I guess, right?
Definitely, yeah. People, especially our members right now, they feel like they've been marginalized by union power, not really given a voice. I mean, I've had plenty of motions shut down. I've been moved off of committees and things just because I'm a critic. Like I think things through. I'm not the smartest guy in the room, but if I have a question about something, I'm not a bobblehead person, right? Just like, oh yeah, everyone agrees with the chair or the president.
Union power being the main dominant faction within the union.
Yeah, it's definitely it's the most dominant faction that's probably ever happened in our union, and it came from a really good place, but um, I think they've kind of hit a wall in that they compromise too much with neoliberal politicians and policy, and it's like as far as you can go. They've gone as far as they can go in terms of left politics in Los Angeles, as far as they're willing to go. And core is here to push the envelope. We're here to take it further, right? We're like the dialectic. We're fighting the kind of the old way, bringing in something new, a higher vibration, that will really wake up Los Angeles in a way that hasn't happened in a long time.
Right, because it seems from what you've been saying almost that that union power is kind of, their ambitions are starting to outgrow the union itself. They want to become more involved with political issues that are going on, but there's issues within the union that need to be addressed first, right?
Yeah, I mean the grievance process is a prime example, right? They haven't really, I've heard of very few cases going to arbitration, which is like after something reaches like an impasse at the school site, there's no resolution here. It's supposed to move up to the district level, and I haven't heard of those moving up at all, right? And that's, I mean, without, you have a contract, and the only way to really enforce it is through the grievance procedure, right? Put it on paper. This happened to me, and what is the resolution going to be? If you're not willing to do that, right? You're just that's a fundamental principle of a union is to protect the dignity of the workers. So yeah, I get it. There's other ambitions that they have their eyes set on, but there's only so many of them, and it's a labor union. Labor comes first, right? Improving our working conditions, and we can work with other groups that are doing that type of things, but you got to stay, you got to protect your house, right? Your institution, your workers first.
So your vision with Correlate is that the union should definitely be more primarily focused on the workers' issues, the teachers', direct issues that we're having, try to resolve more of these issues.
Yeah, you got. I mean, I go back to the UTLA Constitution, right? And it's about protecting the profession, the teaching profession, right? And that's about it's about protecting our income, but it's also building us up as teachers, right? And if you even look at the model of professional development, it's just a piecemeal mess type thing. The district and the union have not created a system that really helps to develop teachers in a really progressive way throughout their career. I mean, I have a whole theory on restructuring the way PD is done in LAUSD. So yeah, this is what we do, right? We teach, right? Part of the platform is pedagogy, right? That we organize around demands that make the entire teaching force, better, right? If a police officer gets training on how to use a pistol every month, right? Because if they don't do that training every month, right, they might mess that up,
Right.
Right? That's to kill somebody. But teachers, you can go years without really any good training,
Mm-hmm.
right? And
Not to discount any teachers, but even when I was a student, I know I had a lot of my fellow students saying like, "Oh, this one teacher doesn't seem like they really know how to teach us this subject. I'm not learning anything. I don't know what's going on."
yeah, and it's not that the teacher. I mean, we went to college and got our master's
Right.
degrees and all of that, but you need fine tuning. Like a doctor, a lawyer, they're constantly getting training, going to conferences. A doctor has to take a test every year to keep their license, right?
Mm-hmm.
Teachers, they just kind of it's a hell of a job, right? And they just kind of throw you in there and hey, just do a good job. I don't have to go in there and do it. You have to go do it and
Right.
make it work,
Right.
right?
You're pretty much responsible for everything in your classroom.
Yeah, and I've even tried to talk to admin, like, principal. The origin of that term is the principal teacher, right? And so you're supposed to be able to show everyone how to, the fundamentals, right, and make everyone better, right? That's how a principal came to be back in the day. They were the leader of the school. So, we get observed. They come in and sit in our room for 10 minutes in the corner. They leave us a note online like, oh, I saw this, I didn't see this, da, da, da. But how does that really, you're not working with people, you know?
Right. What works on paper might not necessarily work in every classroom situation.
Right. And you have who you have in the teaching profession. It's not like you can say, oh, I'm going to get rid of all these teachers. I'm going to bring in a new truckload of great teachers, right?
Right.
You have the people who want to do it and really the people who are the best trained, but you got to create a system where, they can be innovative.
And really, what's a truckload of really great teachers worth if you're not providing them the support they need?
Right. It's training. I mean, Facebook, all these companies, they know they got work that needs to get done, and they make sure their workers are tuned up, as much as possible. But teaching isn't. It's there's a lot that needs to be rethought about it, and yeah, we have ideas around that.
So you really
Definitely.
want to sort of try to start restructuring how education works and how we approach education.
Yeah, the whole model, and we need to be looking at these other countries, right? Not just here in the U.S. You don't hear about what other countries are doing in education and how to adopt that over here. And from what little bit I've learned, they do not throw on. They don't have you teach all day long and then you go home at night and adjust your lessons and grade work. It's like you have about half the workload, and the other half is for reflection and planning, right? In the American system, it's just everyone's got too much work to do out of
Okay.
school setting.
Yeah.
Everyone's got the work of like two people, and it's hard to make that experience really good for the students every day when you have just a gazillion students to deal with, and
It's basically like a 24/7, 365 days a year job almost.
yeah, it definitely is. It definitely is, and like our salary scale, you take classes to get to the top of the scale. Once you're top of the scale, you can do that in a few years. Then you're topped out. You don't need to take classes anymore. There's no point in taking classes anymore. But you still need to take classes. You still have to grow,
Right.
But and a lot of people don't take the classes because you're working all the time. So people never get to the top of the salary scale. And so they're not getting the training and they're not getting paid. So I have a way to, it's a simple way. The district does some classes like this where I can literally just, they email me a class, a list of classes, right? And paid, right? At your professional rate, and you click on the one you want to go, they send you back a confirmation, you go to the class, it shows up in your pay stub, right? As opposed to searching around online. I mean, they do have a database of classes you can go to that are provided that you pay for. You get the documentation that you went, you give it to the district, they take months and months and months, and sometimes they mess it up a lot of the times that, we didn't get this paperwork, whatever, and then you might end up seeing it on your paycheck. If you take, let's say, 3 college classes, that's what it takes to go up one step, like $2,000 a year, right? That might take you a whole year to do that, right? And you might, by the time the paperwork gets processed, a year and a half. It's just not, to me, it's just too patchwork, right?
All right. It's almost like a intentional feedback loop, it seems, of keeping teachers in a position where they don't necessarily want to take these classes because it's just too much of a hassle.
Yeah. Got to go search them up. So, I mean, they do have some departments, they're getting a little bit better. Like last year, I was able to go to a training. It was just, I got a district email, click on the link, you're in the class, you're going to go these 3 days and this is going to show up on your paycheck. It's just that simple, right? I shouldn't have to go search the city for 3 salary point classes.
All right.
And take time off of work, and the class I took through the district it was in the summer, right? They had it right the last day of school, and then there was a class for 3 days that you got paid for. That was great. Why? What's so hard about organizing your PD around the schedule of your teachers? Yeah, restructuring the whole thing, and I think union power is more about the status quo. They're fine getting back to the status quo, right? Core is about pushing through all of that, realizing the system isn't working for like half the students in LUSD, and fixing it, and not just being happy, just patting people on the back, patting a politician. Hey, we came to an agreement. We're almost back to where we were 10 years ago, and
So, hypothetical, let's assume a couple months down the road, the contract still hasn't been released, and you get elected. First day, what do you do?
Well, I'd probably file a perb charge against the school district, a labor violation, right? They agreed to a contract, and they haven't, they haven't followed through, right? And I communicate that to everybody. Our communications is not really great. We communicate to the teachers what is going on, but we don't communicate to the public what is going on, right? We have a United Teachers newspaper that goes out to every teacher, right? But what goes out to the public, right? So they're aware. I revamp our communications strategy. I revamp our organizing strategy in terms of, we can be having mass meetings. I call them, monthly mass meetings around the city. We have those right now built into our union, but they've watered them down so much that they don't really accomplish what they could, right? We have area meetings every month. I read the Constitution. They're actually called area assemblies, right? And they're supposed to be like mass meetings of teachers. All the teachers, right, are open to come to these meetings and tell leadership what needs to be done, right? I've been going to these meetings for a year as a co-chapter chair, now as a chapter chair, but I'm only invited as a chair, right? We don't invite everybody to these mass meetings, right? So I get elected. I call mass meetings throughout the city. I invite parents. I invite students. We come up with an agenda together. Of course, I'll have some ideas out front, but then we come up with a plan of action, and we get parents and students and teachers working together, and recapture that energy of the strike. I call a mass demonstration within 3 months. We'd be doing those year round. Yeah.
So really trying to democratize education.
Yeah. Students, it's in our Constitution. We should be organizing the students, right? That's in our preamble. I've organized students. I've done it on my own, not through the union, right? We just kind of, it's just, if you want to organize students, you do, right? Type thing. And if you do, you might get in trouble. You might get fired. You got to be
Right.
careful, all this stuff. But
Ran into quite a lot of issues like that when I was a student.
yeah, really, there needs to be a lot more. There needs to be like a structure in place, a UTLA youth, where that is certified. They get to meet on campus. They have rights. To make policy at the school, or at least, bargaining rights, maybe create a student contract type thing. But yeah, that's in our preamble. We went over that last night and people were asking about that. And I said, well, I can't even tell you too much because the union really hasn't taken that up, right? That we integrate students into what we do as a union. Yeah, so I got plans. I think people are worried maybe a little bit about my plans, but the society has to move forward, right? And core. I think core can harness the energy of UTLA and really turn it into a lever to transform the city.
Society has to move forward, yeah. Soni, I want to thank you for joining me for this chat and for sharing your classroom with us. And to all of you, thank you for listening. If you'd like to learn more about Soni's campaign and Core LA, their pages will be linked down below in the description. As always, more information about the topics we discussed in this Red Talk will also be linked in the description. If you enjoyed the show, be sure to like and subscribe, and stay up to date with all new Camera and Sickle content. Until next time, this has been Cobalt Macavinu from the Camera and Sickle.